I felt it was really important to talk about treatment. Now, if you're not going through cancer, this is just as important though, but if you know somebody who is, it's really important that you're able to support them so you get an understanding of the treatment that they're going through. So if you've been diagnosed with cancer and you're going through your treatment, or you know a family member or a friend that's going through it, this whole section around, you know, coping with the treatment that you're going through is really, really essential. So let's talk about chemo, coping with chemo. Now, if you've adopted that approach and you've decided that that's what you're going to do, and you're going to you're going to go through chemotherapy, and you discuss this at length with your oncologist, and your family or whoever, and you've made that decision, you will know, because you've asked the questions from your oncologist, what it entails. And they are very, very good, I have to say. Well, certainly my oncologists were, at National Health Service here in England, were great at going through all of the protocols and what it entailed. And also, of course, they have to legally tell you all of the side effects and what's going to happen, and they give you all of that. So you will know what's and all what you're to expect with chemotherapy. But, and I say this, it is very personal, and everybody reacts differently. And how I reacted with my chemo may not be the same as somebody else. So we are all very, very individual. We also start with a very different body and a very different immune system. We all start with a different way of coping with things. So it's very difficult to say to anybody specifically how you are going to cope with chemotherapy, but I do know some strategies that will really help and support you. It's really important that we share those, okay? So, I went through chemotherapy and I had to have 6, and I had to have 1 chemo every 3 weeks. Now, chemo really does, you know, bombards you. It's very, very toxic, and it's sadly, because of the way it is, and I'm hoping at some point in the future they'll come to this point where they can specifically target the cancer cell. But at the moment, chemotherapy is this kind of whole, let's zap everything. So sadly, your healthy cells in your body are going to get zapped alongside the cancer cells. That's just the way it is. It's just not targeted, unfortunately, in that regard. So what can we do to help our healthy cells regenerate and cope with this bombardment of poisons, which is basically what it is. We're poisoning the cancer cells. Now, it is our job as a cancer patient in between chemotherapy to really work on the immune system. And we know that we can't really go into the next chemo session if our white blood cells are, you know, if there's a problem, right? They won't let us. We normally do a blood test just before the next chemo, and from that blood test they're able to decide whether or not we are healthy enough and our immune system strong enough to do the next one. Okay, so therefore it is the job of anybody going through chemo to make sure that between the chemo sessions that, you know, this is the protocol I approached, is to make sure that I was as healthy as I could possibly be. And I told my oncologist I'm going to do every single one on time. I'm not going to have any delays. And they said, well, you can't say that. I said, no, I can say that. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that before each chemo I'm absolutely as healthy as I possibly can be. Now, that's not to say I didn't have some horrendous sick days. I did. I had some days where I literally chucked up all day. You know, that's one, unfortunately, of the sort of side effects of chemo. It was in my case. All I'm saying is that I focused predominantly on my immune system. I didn't even talk about the cancer, as I said to you before. So we have to work on getting our immune system as healthy as possible, being as healthy as we possibly can, adopting all of these principles that I've talked to you about, okay, in between each session, living on a plant-based diet, predominantly with lots and lots of water, supplements, which we'll talk about later, alternative therapies, anything you can do in between your chemotherapies to keep your body as healthy and vibrant as you possibly can, to enable your body to heal from this bombardment of toxins that you're going to be going through, okay? And rest. And we'll talk a bit more in a little bit about relaxation and rest. So, going under the knife, well, everybody's cancer is so different, so it's very difficult for me to say, you know, you'll go through chemo, then you'll go through surgery, and then you'll have this. Because from the experience that I've had and looking at other people who've gone through cancer, you know, it's all very different. Your protocols will all be very different depending on the type of cancer that you've got, or on the type of cancer that your family member has got. So it's very difficult to say one size fits all, because it doesn't. They're very, very specific, and your treatment plan is very specific. So just make sure that if you are having surgery as part of your cancer treatment protocol, that you ask a lot of questions, that you know what you're getting into. Yeah, so make sure, and don't feel, you know, embarrassed or that you're troubling your surgeon to ask them about what is the surgery, what are they actually going to be doing, what do you need to do beforehand to keep yourself healthy, how can you help yourself, what's the recovery period, how long will you stay in hospital, all of these things. We talked earlier on about keeping a journal, you know, and making a note of some questions that you might want to ask. Well, I would suggest you do the same. Sit down calmly before your surgery and really make a list of all the things you want to know, and don't be embarrassed or afraid to ask those questions, and write them down, write the answers down. And if you take somebody in with you to talk to your surgeon, they will also write those down as well, because they need to support you through that. So they also get to understand, you know, what you're going to be going through as part of your surgery, and how can they support you through that surgery? How can they support your recovery out the other side? How long is it going to take? You know, I had my surgery, I had 46 lymph nodes removed, and I had a huge scar under here, and I had to have a bag that drained it out, and it was quite scary to have this bag in this, you know, this surgery. I couldn't have the radiation until this healed, you know, and mine took quite a long time to heal. Because of the nature of where it was, under the arm. So just be aware that, you know, you are going through major surgery, you will be tired, you will need to rest. What are the restrictions in terms of your ability to drive, your ability to do normal stuff? You know, you need to understand these things. The other thing I would also say, which I think is critical, is that post-surgery, they tend to give you a list of exercises that you may need to do in terms of your rehabilitation. I would urge you to do those. It makes such a significant difference to you in terms of your mobility later on after you've recovered from surgery if you do these exercises. They're in there for a reason, and they will help you predominantly, okay? I have friends who had similar surgery to me, who can only put their arm up to here now because they didn't do the post-surgery exercises. I can raise my arms above my head. Why? Because literally I did these specific exercises where you put your hands up against the wall or various other things religiously. I did them 2 or 3 times a day. And so it comes back to this whole thing that we've been discussing through the whole thing. The whole modular thing is, you know, you're going to get out of this what you put in. And if you're prepared to have that discipline and help yourself and focus on your recovery and your healing, you stand a way better chance of coming out the other side in a healthy and a thriving state. Okay, so let's talk about radiotherapy strategies, because, you know, as I said before, it's very difficult to say when you're going to have radiotherapy, if you're going to have radiotherapy. You know, everybody's cancer is different. So that, again, I urge you to make sure you get all of the information and to try to understand, you know, what's going to be happening to you. Also, again, very, very difficult to say how anyone is going to react. I know that when I went into my radiotherapy sessions, I thought, oh, this is going to be a breeze. You know, I've done 6 chemos, I've had 46 lymph nodes removed and all of this sort of thing. And I'd come out of the other side of those. I had chemo first, then surgery, and then that was my protocol. 15 radiotherapy sessions over 3 weeks, 1 every day. And you know, I thought it would be a breeze. I honestly thought, if I can get through chemo and I can get through the surgery, this is going to be easy for me. Actually, what I didn't realise, and I completely underestimated, how tired I was. You know, I was absolutely exhausted with it. In fact, I found it probably more difficult than the other things. So, and I had no control. I think that's probably what it was. I had no control over the reaction of it, whereas with the chemo and with the surgery I was able to do things in between to boost my immune system. So I had to just respect and nurture and love my body and respect it. You know, that's one of the big things I've had to learn this year, is that I only have one body and one mind, and it's really important that I take that on, you know, and that I do everything I can to support that. So again, these are the strategies. So if you're going into radiotherapy, make sure you really understand what you're going in for and what part of the body and how it works. You may even want to go into the radiation room and have a look at what it looks like, because it can be a little bit daunting to be lying there with this machinery whirring around you and going into different places, and then they all leave the room and you're lying there on your own while all of this stuff is, you know, zapping you. So, you know, you're perfectly entitled to go in and have a look at the environment that you're going to be spending every day in. Okay, that's fair enough, isn't it? So go in, ask questions again, get prepared, take your journal in. You know, I had one book that I always used with me, you know, for journaling everything. Ask questions, take somebody with you so they ask questions as well, and that they can also write down what's going to be happening to you, so that when you come away, you've both got a different angle to look at it from. Yeah? Put things in place, get your support in place ready. And if you think you're going to get very tired, and predominantly you do with radiotherapy, make sure you have that support network around you at all times, all the way through the radiotherapy, to make sure that you've got that support for you. Yeah? Also, as I say, I used to run 100 bars an hour, you know, and I used to think, oh, having a nap was kind of, who does that? You know, only grandmothers have naps in the afternoon. And I had to really learn that I have to listen to my body. So if you're really tired, rest, take a nap, but record it, make a note of it so that you can start to see those patterns. Yeah? So just go in very prepared, ask the questions, get the right support network around you, and rest when you need it. Allow your body to heal. Also be prepared and recognize this, that radiation in your body and radiotherapy takes a long time to come out of your body, a long time. It's taken months for my radiotherapy to come through. And what I also did with mine is that I contacted a homeopathic centre, and I took homeopathic remedies for radiation, and they helped me a lot, little capsules. And again, I'll put those when we come on to looking at supplements and alternative therapies. I'll talk about those then. Okay, so I talked in radiotherapy about rest and relaxation and napping and those kinds of things, and I never really thought I would ever do those things, and I've had to learn that this year. So one of the things my cancer journey has taught me is to rest and relax. It's so important. It's absolutely vital to your healing to learn to factor in the relaxation and the rest when you need it. Okay. Sleep is another big one, right? So sleep has a massive impact on your immune system, and lack of sleep, and it's quite a big epidemic at the moment with people having real troubles with sleeping. And lack of sleep has many forms. You know, it comes from things like where you have broken sleep through the night and you can't get back to sleep, or whether you wake up at a certain time in the middle of the night and can't get back to sleep, you've got something on your mind, or whether you go to bed and you can't get to sleep, you're tired, but for some reason you can't fall asleep. And that has an impact on your immune system. So please don't underestimate that. And we do talk about sleep in one of the other modules later on, with some tips and strategies around that. But if you're not getting a good night's sleep, and sometimes some of the drugs will affect that, then make sure that you're factoring in the day some form of relaxation and rest, okay? So make sure you're factoring that in, and let people know that that's what you need, yeah? I had to sort of almost educate my children, because they'd never seen me nap before. So I had to educate my children to say, I'm actually going to go up and I'm going to lie down. I need to rest. I need to rest for half an hour. I need to rest for an hour. I also did a lot more meditation. I've learned to meditate, and I did a lot of meditation that helped me as well, but we'll talk about that in mindfulness. So just make sure that rest and relaxation is just as important as your protocol around vitamins, supplements, food and everything else, okay? Make it a major factor as part of your healing. So I want to end this module with the last one, and that is support, okay? We talked about support before, and I've talked about it around the toxic environment as well, about making sure you get good support, positive support, not negative support. The last thing you need The last thing I needed through my journey was any negative support around me or anybody. In fact, one of the things I found that really kind of jarred me, actually, that made it quite difficult for me, is people who constantly wanted to talk about cancer. Now, I'm not saying you're the same as me, but I remember sitting in a pub one day, and I remember somebody going on, and people do love to tell you their cancer stories. You know, everybody sadly actually knows someone who's got cancer, or knows a family member who's got cancer, or knows someone who died of cancer. And I know it's shocking and it's difficult and it's tragic, but when you're going through a cancer journey, the last thing you want to hear is a story about how somebody's relative or friend has died of cancer. That's the last thing you want to hear. But unfortunately, that comes out all the time. So I made it an absolute mission of mine to make sure that I didn't indulge that kind of discussion, okay, and didn't let that come into kind of my environment. It was really important. And I remember being in the pub, and I remember, you know, just talking about my health, and obviously this group of people knew I was going through cancer treatment at the time. And I remember somebody in the group saying, oh yes, my auntie went through cancer, and blah, 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 and started talking all about it. Well, 45 minutes later, she's still talking about cancer and going on and on about it, and then just saying how her auntie died. And I had to turn to her and I actually said, let's stop talking about it. If you don't mind, I hope you don't mind, and I'm not being rude, I really don't want to talk about cancer anymore. I don't actually talk about cancer. I focus on my health and my immune system. I focus on my well-being. And I had to explain to this person, and I wasn't trying to tell them off, and I didn't want them to feel bad, but I had to explain that I treat cancer, as I said earlier, like a naughty child. I do not give it any attention at all. And my focus was not on my disease. My focus was not on the imbalance in my body, but my focus was very much on my health, on my well-being, on my immune system. And I had to almost educate the people around me, my support network, my family, my friends, colleagues, and everyone about how to be around me. And also to be fair to other people, I don't want to be too harsh here, but also to be fair, some people just don't know what to say. They just don't know what to say. They don't know how to say it. They don't know how to cope with it. They may have had a difficult story themselves. They may have heard a tragic story. And they also, in some way, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, they may also be ignorant, and they are ignorant to some degree, of all of the choices that are out there and all of the information and all of the protocols that I'm sharing with you today, right? I was ignorant of this stuff. No one told me about it. No one has told me about it. I've had to learn all of this stuff myself. I've had to learn it through studying and reading and watching and scientific journals and everything. And no one has shared this information with me. So of course these people don't know this stuff. So it's really important to understand that they don't understand either. And we have to kind of educate people about how we want to be treated during our own cancer journey. So I would sort of suggest to you that it's a good idea to try and sort of educate people and discuss and communicate with people, about how you want to be supported, how you want to be talked to, how you want to be nurtured, and what you need. And you need to share that with people. One, don't expect them to know, but also make sure that you're not embarrassed or not afraid to tell them what you actually need through this support, through this journey. And also don't be afraid to maybe share some of this information with them. Let them watch this video, let them watch these modules, because they could learn something.